Welcome everybody to Midtown Happy Hour Live. Man, it's episode 4K. I hope you brought your 4Kest monitor to watch this 4K stream on 4K cameras and the 4K Tricaster TC2E on YouTube's 4K live streaming service. That's a lot of 4K. We're going to be talking about a Birddog P400 4K PTZ on this episode, and I personally invited Mr. Don Riggle III of Birddog to join us in the chat room. He said he couldn't join us because he was getting a shot. I promised, since it's happy hour, we'd do a shot in honor of Don. Here's my broad field distribution shot glass. There's the guys that purvey the P400 and other Birddog cameras. Don, we hope your shot goes as good as that shot. Oh, man. Happy hour to everybody. It's Friday, it's 4:45 p.m. We invite you to kick out of work a little bit early, open up your favorite adult beverage, and tune in for some video streaming information. As I said, today is episode 4K. We hope you're watching on your 4K monitors. I want to take a brief moment to thank our sponsor, Midtown Video. You know, we talk about a lot of badass gear on the show. We talk about virtual events, USB capture devices, lights, cameras, microphones, and you might be thinking to yourself, Jesse, where can I get those things? The answer is Midtown Video. I wonder if you can take my desktop, Mr. Alex, because here is midtownvideo.com, and we have a brand new shop section. Now, I'm not trying to have oodles and oodles and oodles of stuff available, but every time I talk about something on this show, I'm going to put it on this shop. You've heard us talk about the Aja U-Taps and that Legrand AV bridge. You know my favorite USB chatting microphones and the Decimator MDHX scaler, some Birddog Flex 4K stuff. Anyway, that's enough of the store. I just want you to know it's there. It's not overwhelming. You'll be able to get your hands on some of the stuff that we're talking about just by visiting our store. And now, what is some of the stuff that we're talking about today in 4K? Before we talk about 4K cameras, I'd like to bring up a slide that showcases the important difference between 4K and HD. You remember when we transitioned from SD to HD and they had the little square of SD down in the corner and the big square of HD, you know, taking up most of the screen? Well, you're going to be blown away by how much bigger 4K is than HD. Alex, do we have a 4K slide? Wham! Look at that. Look at that. The green stuff, the super bright green, is 1080p. They call that full HD. And the lighter green is 2K. 2148 by 1080, right? Now, I invite you to check out the 4K stuff. That dark red 4K UHD ultra high definition, that is four times the resolution of regular old HD. Now, they put UHD there because it's not really 4K. The resolution of UHD is 3048 by 2160. Pretty close, but not completely the 17 by 9 4K aspect ratio. UHD is 16 by 9 aspect ratio, just like, you know, regular old HD, 1920 by 1080 is 16 by 9. But to get true, complete 4K, which is 4,096 pixels wide, that's a 17 by 9 aspect ratio. That's this pink stuff here, the DCI 4K. Anyway, we're coming to you live in 4K UHD today. 16 by 9 stuff. It's what you find on commercial and residential 4K televisions. And so I'll remind you once again, I hope you're watching on a 4K TV because you do not want to miss out on this. We do, of course, welcome all of our HD viewers. Thank you for watching, and our mobile viewers, our iPhones and our Galaxies. We really appreciate it when you guys show up, but you might be missing out on some ultra high definition. Maybe you'll watch the show again when you get home and you put it on your big 4K monitors. Happy hour, everybody. We hope you're enjoying your favorite adult beverages. After that shot in honor of Don Riggle, I need a little beer to chase it down. MIA Brewery, there's a local guy, a nice Weiss beer, Miami Weiss. That really helps the 4K go down smooth. I am totally famous 4K video guy Jesse Miller. And now, let's get on with the show. You're used to seeing me on my favorite PMW-F55 camera. Well, that's a 4K camera that records in 4K and outputs 4K, but the Tricaster TC1 is all the way over there. Excuse me, the TC2E is all the way over there in my control room. So you might be asking yourself, Jesse, how did you get this badass 4K signal all the way over there to the control room? Did you spend a lot of money on 12G copper? No, I did not. What I did do is I used a Newtek Spark UHD. That's a 4K device that takes HDMI 4K in and gives you network connectivity out to put it on the NDI network. Pretty badass. I wonder if you can go to my desktop again here, Alex. I want to show you the Connect Spark Plus IOHD. So we're not joking here. You can see that it's bringing in 3840 by 2160 at 30 frames per second. I mentioned it's NDI, which is a network-based infrastructure. Look at that. I've only got 172 megabits per second bandwidth. To give you some reference, it takes 120 megs per second to get HD bandwidth on NDI. And for another 50 megabits per second, you get 4K. Pretty badass. So what you're looking at is it's the web page interface of Newtek's 4K HDMI 2 network NDI interface. That's enough of that. Let's get back to the camera. Here we are, PMW-F55. All it takes to get that sucker onto your 4K TriCasters is a Newtek Spark UHD. Now, 2 of those Newtek Sparks are included with every purchase of a Newtek TriCaster 4K Mini. The 4K Mini is about $8,000. That's a complete switcher. It does 4K, it does HD, and it comes with 2 of these devices that will take your baseband 4K cameras and push them onto the NDI network. Now, you don't need a PMW-F55. You don't need to spend $50,000 on a camera, $4,000 on a lens to have beautiful HD signals. You could get a Panasonic EVA 1. You could get a Sony A7S III with its little micro HDMI to Mac, little micro HDMI port. All of these devices would put out a beautiful 4K signal on an HDMI connection, stick it into a Birddog Flex, stick it into a Spark UHD, and it joins your NDI network. Now you can switch to it from your TriCasters. But even more than this, I wanted to bring everybody's attention to one of my new favorite cameras. Well, how much do we say the PMW-F55 was? 50 grand, right? Plus another 4,000 for the lens, plus another couple grand for the eyepiece and the batteries and whatever. What if you only wanted to spend 4K to get 4K? What's that? What's that you say? There's a PTZ that will do it for you. And it comes from Birddog. It's the Birddog P400. They have the word eyes in there somewhere, but I just know it as the P400. And it's right over here. Why don't you show us a nice shot from that P400, Mr. Alex? Look at that. It's a picture of my wife. We got a couple of TIE fighters in there. We got my straight from Amsterdam, Jesse fucking Miller, custom Heineken. That's really beautiful. But it's missing a host. Hello. All right, now you got a host in there. This is the Birddog P400 PTZ camera. It's $39.95. So when I say 4K, yes, I'm talking about 3048 by 2160 resolution, but I'm also talking about only $4,000, $39.95. You know where you may be able to find this in about a week or two? On the Midtown Video Store. Really, you can find it everywhere. They're prevalent. For a while, they were a little tough to grab, but inventory levels are up, and we have delivered more than a few systems that are comprised of a Newtek TriCaster Mini 4K, and 3, 4, or 5 Birddog P400 4K PTZ cameras. Man, can you get a little closer? I mean, I don't like to I don't like to cut my own legs off, but you can see every blemish. You can see every little crevice. These 4K cameras are amazing. It really is like the difference between SD and HD. Only a little bit more, man. It's like 4 times HD resolution. It's enough to make a makeup artist run for their lives. You know what I mean? I'm impressed. I'm impressed by these images. And it's not just these images that you see live. Alex, my buddy Eamon Drew, who's like the co-founder and CEO of Birddog, he posted some really cool stills that they captured from a live production that they did with very minimum tweaking of the colorimetry. I wonder, can we feature some of those photos? Oh yeah, there's one. Look at that guy. This is some sharp stuff. That's looking really good. Yeah, there's another one. Very cool. I like that little star effect on the monitor. On the light there. So you can get an idea of And Eamon says, hey, you know, we shot these with very minimal tweaking to the colorimetry. Well, what does that mean? Since it's an NDI-enabled camera, so it's got 6G SDI out, right? 6G is going to give you 4K 30 frames per second. Or it's totally NDI. You can have one cable to this camera, PoE plus, maybe it's PoE plus plus, and that will give you tally, video, audio, control, and power, all on a single cable, which is how we're using it right now. We're using just the network cable. We don't have HDMI. We don't have 6G SDI connected and ran back to. We're using the Newtek's NDI feature that Mr. Andrew Cross invented. There it is, the P400. I like that. But what I'd really like to give you a look at is the back door, the network interface of the P400. As I mentioned, Mr. Eamon Drew said, hey, we didn't even do that much to the colorimetry, but if you wanted to, let's check out what you can do to the colorimetry. So this is, let's see, here's the exposure page, obviously, at Midtown Video, we're in manual here. Gain's up at 9 dB, my iris is all the way down. I want everything in focus, but if I wanted to, oh no, is that down or up? Up! Iris is all the way open. Let's zoom in on that. Iris is all the way open at an f2.0 because we want to create as much shallow depth of field effect as possible. I've got some shutter speeds. I'm shooting at 30 frames per second, so I put my shutter at 130, but check out some of this other stuff that you can do in the white balance direction. We're in one push white balance. Sort of like your old broadcast cameras, you could set it to A memory or B memory and hit the auto white balance to pull a nice white balance. You've got really a lot of opportunities to change the way your picture looks. And as I mentioned, Mr. Drew was pretty happy about how not much out-of-the-box tweaking required in order to get those really nice looking photos of the guys who were in the band. Well, we had to do it a little differently because we had to, I don't want to say match, but approach the same imagery of the P400 against the PMW-F55. Alex, can we go to the 55? Not that jarring, right? Sure, it's a different camera, it's a different price range, but I just want to share that we had to spend a little time on the back end of the P400 in order to dial it in to the PMW-F55. Something really cool about the F55 I want to share is that it comes with its own little, it comes with its own app. So it puts, let's see here, it's got a, maybe closer in on the other guy. Is that possible? Thank you. So PMW-F55, I'm able to jump in using a Wi-Fi connection to the camera and change my white balance, change my shutter, all those little colorimetry settings that the P400 I was doing on the network there, I was doing it on my iPhone on a direct connection to the PMW-F55 over here. It's pretty helpful when what you want to accomplish is a match. So I'm on, you know, opening up my exposure, opening up my you know, matching the gain settings to my lighting conditions and dialing this camera in. Then I need to grab over to this camera. You want as much flexibility as possible. Sad that F55 isn't really hanging around anymore. To be honest, it's become my webcam. It's become my webcam. After we closed our digital cinema rental department, this 4K monster became my HD webcam, and it helps us look our best, I think. But hey, how about this guy? If it was only $4 grand, I could get 12 of these P400 cameras for the price of one F55 body. That's crazy. That's crazy. Now, of course, Birddog does have yet one more fancy. So this is a 4K 30 camera. They do have a 4K 60 model. So that's not the P400. I think that's just called a Birddog 4K. That's a pretty badass camera as well. This is in our demo stock. If you wanted to get your hands on it for a week or two, if you wanted to see how nice it works with your system, with your Tricaster, or if you needed to borrow this and a Tricaster, like a TC Mini 4K, we could put that package together for you so you get your hands on it, do your own testing to the YouTube 4K streaming department. Now, when it comes to streaming, bitrate, bandwidth, that's like weight when you're flying a helicopter. So I gotta say, YouTube is like really complaining. They're like, man, I wanted 23 megabits per second and you're only streaming at 14 megabits per second here. So it's a data intensive system. For comparison, when streaming HD, we're pushing 5, maybe 6 megabits per second. But if it's 4 times the resolution, you could rightly expect that it's about 4 times the bit rate when you're crunching to 24 megabits per second or 14 megabits per second and streaming it out to YouTube. But interestingly, and I was really blown away by this, can you give me my desktop one more time? Like I said, when we push that 4K HDMI into the Newtek Spark UHD, somehow Andrew Cross figured out how to get it at 172 megabits per second. That is true 4K compressed right into my Newtek Tricaster. That's amazing. That is amazing. And it's cool how the TC2E takes that 170 megabits per second and yet compresses it further into 13 megabits per second for YouTube 4K. But I'm ready to say that there's an impressive signal coming through on the other end. Even if you've got limited bandwidth, you could probably make an impression streaming in 4K. Let's see, did we get it all done? I need to offer my thanks to Mr. Daniel Sell of DSB Entertainment, who came by and helped us dial in the colorimetry of the P400. It didn't take more than a half an hour. Again, Mr. Eamon Drew says, hey, look how great things looked with only minimal tweaking. I would say we did about the same. We did about only minimal tweaking, and look how great it looks. Of course, that's with the hands of a skilled engineer that knows how to color, knows how to paint. So we want to offer him our sincere thanks. Thank you for participating. Once more, if you want to grab yourself some of the stuff that we're pushing on our show, you can find it on midtownvideo.com and click on the shop icon. We're not trying to beat any of the online giants. We just want you to know that these are the curated items that have been handpicked by Jesse Miller and Midtown Video to be guaranteed totally awesome. They're going to work in any situation, and you can count on the P400 being added to that shop in a not too distant future. Will the PMW-F55 show up? Probably not, but you'll find that the Newtek Spark UHD already is on there, and it will soon be joined by some of the Birddog Flex 4K line of NDI encoders and decoders. Cool thing about the Spark, you can switch it between encode mode and decode mode. So if you've got, let's say, 1 gig network ran throughout your facility, you can pop one of those PoE devices anywhere on the network and get your full input and output. Interestingly, my program monitor right here is being fed by none other than a Birddog Studio NDI decoder. It's actually an encoder decoder, but I put it in decode mode so I'd keep an eye on the program here and make sure every time I ask, can you do this for me, that yes, they can. And they always can. The control room is being operated by Mr. Alex Girola, excellent technical director. Thank you so much. Our audio operative this week is Mr. Mark Parson. Stage managing is Lindsay Kogan, as usual. We really appreciate you guys joining us on these Midtown Happy Hour Lives. It's our opportunity to hang out, cut out of work early, have a little drink, and talk about the latest in video production and streaming. This has been episode 4K, coming to you live on the Birddog P400 4K PTZ camera. Sony's PMW-F55 connected via Newtek UHD Spark I/O, and streaming live on YouTube's 4K streaming service all the way through the TC2E 4K Tricaster. Totally awesome. We appreciate you guys for joining us. Hope you enjoyed it. Leave your comments in the live chat, or if you're watching this after Friday, March 19th, go ahead and post a YouTube comment. Don't forget to click like and subscribe. Join us in our shop at midtownvideo.com, and tune in next week on Midtown Video's Happy Hour Live, where we're going to be talking about podcasting and USB peripherals to get your badass production gear into your computer so that you can podcast. Thanks again, everybody. This has been Jesse Miller. Really enjoyed your presence, and we hope to see you next week on Midtown's Happy Hour Live.
Jesse Miller and Midtown Video presents the Jesse Miller Show. Yeah. Jesse Miller and Midtown Video presents Jesse Miller Show. This is the Jesse Miller Show.